Hello. Suomeen. Melkein. Missä sattuu nyt morjistaa, jos meinaa?
Tätä sosiaalisuutta. This is the social life, you know.
Are we all in the same group? Täytyisi ottaa kuva. I could take a picture where you all are like this. Meet up. Voitko Jarkkoa ensin ja sanoa sille hello? Kato, niin Jarkko on käsi valmiina jo. Hei, Jarkko odottaa.
Mikä tää nyt on?
Kuntakapu 3.
Pizza online ei löytänyt sitten.
Onko se Pirkanella liidulla kanssa? Mitä sulla on tuossa housussa? Ne on ihan värikkäämmät kuin aamulla. Onko se Pirkanella vähän? Onko se Pirkanella suoraan housuilla? Onko lammaskoira? On siinä mennä. Voitko sä tilaa pizzaa vai?
Joo, mistä mä en tilaa? Pizza online se ei oikein suostunut hakea lähialueelta yhtään mitään.
Ai jaa.
Ei nyt tällä kadulla ei tarvitse mitään.
Okei.
Mikä näistä nyt on?
Sitten se tuohon löytää. Vaikea luulisi.
Tässä on joku kaleva. Sehän on kaleva. Sammua. Pistorantit on maassa pienemmät käännyt.
Ja ABC:tä vastapäätä on kyllä.
Tämä on joku ketju. Fabriziosa. Kyyti ja kaleva.
Okei. Ja sitten siinä on se joku pizzeria, mikä on tuossa.
Otetaan
siinä on ABC:tä vastapäätä.
Otetaan riski. Sitten tiedetään.
Niin. Ei vitsi mikään paikka.
Elina osti.
No ajattelin, että Elina on varmaan ostanut. Just hyvä.
Ei tää vaatii jonkun tunnuksen tekemään.
Pizza online.
Nykyään.
Usually, how early should you go to the airport? Like,
it depends on the airport. If you are
like what hotels?
sure, you really think that that's
I've had enough scares of almost losing my life. So it's been going. You think it's going to work?
No.
Let's know. At least 2 hours.
I know
Mikä sun nimi on?
airport is that. I know this rule. It's very airport experience that multiple times and showered from
Sisäinen liikenne. On hyvä päivittää sitä.
yeah. You have to know 2 hours before.
No niin.
Probably in India. If you get like it wasn't actually my problem, but it's just that the way we bought tickets,
Nyt on kilohia.
the layover was 45
Yeah, I just noticed that the comments are not cancelled.
Yeah.
Are you able to see the comments?
Yeah.
Tunnen näissä, näissä on hiekkaa hirveästi. Näitä hiekkaa.
Yeah, but anyways, it's clear.
Yeah, that's our question.
So he was giving.
Yeah. And we already added some pictures.
Yeah.
Enkä laittaa. Se kuulee mitään.
Tämä oli viimeinen kerta, kun mä käytän tätä.
when we were supporting the like 1 hour. That's the amount of time that is required. But the bright side, we we're like, okay, that's
Do it again.
actually like we got to stay after meeting a customer on it, and how do you guys not let sport and want to take it online? She was like, oh, come let me check. How you guys can stay.
Joo.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
We have this teacher course, statistical courses that means beyond Zoom.
Semmoinen mulle hetkinen on.
I heard stories about her. Like it's very hard to pass the courses.
Once I asked her, she smiled and she said, you know, if you don't understand that there's something wrong with it. So I was like, okay. And I was like, it's fine, I accept there is something wrong with me, but please do explain.
Onko vierasverkkoiset tunnukset vai millä sä oot?
Joo, sinne pitää rekisteröityä.
She's like, you're teaching stats, you're teaching maths, you need to be like very precise about it. And she was like, you know, this thingy, that thingy, comfort words. The teacher or instructor needs to prepare for the lecture. They need to take things very seriously.
It doesn't mean that system, not the individual.
Niin siis ei kun mulla on oma. Se tekee omat, sinne rekisteröidytään ja sitten. Joo, ei.
Not for like higher education. While that is true, I do agree that someone's inability to communicate well in a certain language has nothing to do with their preparedness for lectures. You could be helped by because you just cannot speak English. If I draw a comparison between like things with topics, I could see that there is some
Okay, pizza.
There are times when she gets stuck in like some, but I can clearly, like after attending the lecture, I can tell that okay, the lecture was very well prepared. So you can tell where it's the language, you can tell where it's
I've seen the first presentation also.
That's where people don't bother much asking questions. The system is you've heard about there that more piece. So we usually consult them.
No. No.
It's in rocket chat.
Yep. I have the smart buildings and then that latest PDF IoT dashboard.
Yeah, that one.
Okay. Then we have 4.
Okay, guys, this is problem with question number 1. And then you went to the board and you like worried by this guy.
Ei tullut sitä. Askelus. Levelaki.
Enemmän sekaisin. Ei, mä kävin se Kelkuussa. 2010 on ollut viimeistä meidän
There's no margin for this script. Yeah. And then I'll reach Amsterdam. I have to check in at 2 p.m. It's like Airbnb and then I have to like there's this intercity train because I'm not
eihän mulla
siellä area. There's an intercity train.
Niin, ei sitä enää missään käy. Mä haluan sen, että mietän, että ollaan en viittinyt siitä radiosta
I have this area. I guess I'll download the maps for Amsterdam. Harlem, and there was another.
Morjens. Se oli 2-3 ihmistä semmoista, jotka ehti tänne tulla. Se piti ohjata vaan tänne. Siellä vielä hirveästi on paljon tuttua ja ollut siellä kiinnostavia ja perinteisesti sitten ohi. Joo. Se on
There's already tea and coffee there, so no need to wait until once I'm going to try it.
Se oli tarkoitus, että se on semmoinen yleinen Tampereen.
Käytännössä skriinan joukkoon on järjestelmä, mitä on saa rahaa, jos sitten löytää. Voidaan ensimmäiseksi omistajan. Ja sitten se omistaja arvioi ennakoista, kuinka vakava tämä on.
I did like one day I just like called my dad and I was like sarcastic. So I hope you guys didn't get to the massive show the wedding. And but yeah, we actually I was like I haven't told them that I'm so then now this and get a surprise. I hope nobody gets
Siis se on vähän niin kuin samanlainen vantainen. Se oli se niin kuin
like fine and I just like called my
ADS reitit.
so
Se oli huonosti
was getting mad and he's like and okay because I just like I wanted to make sure that before I incur some serious expense I need to make sure I was like
se mihin pitäisi jos sä saat sen väärin, kaikki laajataan asiaksi. Kaikki kaupat.
se DNS auki vastaa siihen kohteessa vastaeseen. Joku tämmöinen vastaava tähän vastaava malli. Sen takia jaettosalaisuus. Sitä ei kukaan kaida sun mobiilisuun.
Ei mistään, sehän ei ole täysin salaamattomia.
Mä ajattelin, että mä puhuttiin siitä, just siitä, mitä eri tapoja on siihen apusuojaan. Se on hyvä sitten se. Ja siellä on tyykeä suunnitelmasta. Hyvä jutella kaupungilla, saako sitä kurssia mainostaa.
Sitten mainostaminen.
Minä nyt unohtaa.
Se oli ihan kans mielestä.
No, you want to be there. I don't. Like,
Yeah, it's a little early, but I started noticing that it's online. And they start getting married like 4-5 years.
I guess we can start now. It's 5 p.m. finish time. Okay. But maybe I sometimes need your help to take care of your laptop.
Yeah.
Okay, so hi everyone. Thanks a lot for coming to today's meetup. I might be a familiar face to you or not so much familiar. So a small introduction about myself. I'm Nazia, and I'm from Bangladesh. I'm now working at appimp.io as the UX engineer. But before that, I came here in Finland in 2014 to study my master's degree. And from summer 2017, I've been trying to take the responsibilities of AppyOps Global Community Manager. I give my thanks to Jarkko because he thinks I would be able to meet up the challenge, and thank you that you think me that I'm capable for it. Okay, so let's go forward with today's meetup. Today is all about IoT and chatbots and artificial intelligence, and I'm really happy and then grateful to Flowworks that they are our most gracious host for today's meetup. So if you want to tweet about today's meetup in Twitter, then use this hashtag AppyOps and maybe to win something for Mindtrek conference, which I'm going to tell you just in a few minutes. And the hashtags you can see in the board at your right. So let's see today's agenda over here. So our first presentation would be given by a member of Flowworks, Anas Bhatta. I think he is now working, he is now here, I believe, as a student. And he has his expertise in user experience, like my own field and service designing. So he would be talking about his summer project on smart building analytics and applications. I think we are missing one of our presenters, who is Ritu Kainulainen, who is from Ultimate AI. He was about to give us a presentation about why chatbots are hard to develop and maintain, but unfortunately he couldn't make it today. So afterwards, instead of taking the interval, I will give a short presentation about one of Appin project on an API dashboard, which I've been working to develop the concept on. And then we will take a short 15 minutes break, because then there will be pizzas and teas for us. Lastly, we will have an API Economy Hack Lab research initiative given by Jaakko Moilanen. And then we will give our give one API Amazon gift card to one of the most active participants in Twitter, who will be tweeting about this meetup information using the hashtags given over there. And then we will have some closing words and remarks about this presentation and something about the upcoming meetup on September 5th. You can subscribe, as usual, you can subscribe to our AppyOps YouTube channel over here, and all our meetups are live telecasted on the day of the meetup in this link. And then if you are more interested to know about the community membership, you can visit at our web shop at hoivi.com. So, an interesting contest from AppyOps community. We are giving away 2 tickets for a 2-day conference of Mindtrack, which is going to take place on September 20th and 21st at Tampere Talo. So the way to participate in this contest is very simple. One opportunity is over here, that you today participate and tweet about the meetup with the hashtags. Second, you can write down a story about API development or API economy at AppyOps Medium blog post. Or you can tweet a 60 seconds video telling about why you deserve to win this ticket using the hashtag AppyOps Mindtrack. And this information will be given more about in our AppyOps regular blog posts in Twitter and Medium. Okay, so without further delay, I welcome Anas Bhatta to present your work on smart building analytics and applications.
Just a sec. Keep on entertaining the people
Yeah.
while I set up the.
Maybe you should give some introduction about yourself.
Right? Yes, okay. So as Nazia mentioned, I'm Anas Bhatta, and just so you're all aware, I will be facing a lot, so if it gets out of hand, just let me know, laugh, or just snap your fingers or something.
Just like throw a cup.
That also works. So the project title, or what I'm going to present about, the title is going to be Smart Building Analytics and Applications. I'm going to start with introducing the team. The team is 3 of us. We're 3 students from TUT, Tampere University of Technology, and the University of Tampere. We have Omer here, and Ali. Omer is a data scientist, and he's handling all the data involved and the back-end development. As for Ali, he's doing the back-end and front-end integration. And as for me, I'm handling the communication for the team and the coordination of the project, as well as the user experience. This team was put together by Flowworks, by USC mainly, and the idea of putting this team together was to get a project, an exploration project for Souk which is the Finnish university properties. Most of you are probably familiar with them. They produce, maintain, and develop premises for universities, colleges, and their partners here in Finland. In most of Finland, except for Helsinki, I believe. They are currently working with 14 or 15 other companies on the project Virpasi, and it is about Internet of Things with the buildings and the new campuses and bringing them closer to the users, as in the students and the faculty at each of those universities, and helping them integrate their knowledge and their experience within the buildings with what they are building now. And this is where our project comes in. Some of those new campuses is the Campus Arena in TUT, and it is collecting data that is not currently being used for anything. The idea for having it was to do building automation and to find just different uses for it. And that's where we came in, to find those uses and try to come up with proof of concepts for them. This data is collected by different vendors. Mainly, the ones we are dealing with now are Siemens and Helvar. And we were provided by multiple resources for the project. The Siemens API Navigator, the Helvar API, and an API that we've built, Ali and Mir built, and the pre-existing 3D model provided by Soup. You can see a screenshot from like the one floor that we chose to work with for our proof of concept. Scratching a bit deeper, digging a bit deeper into the surface of each of those APIs, we start with the Siemens API services. As I mentioned earlier, the data is collected for building automation, and we have chosen the data types that are most relevant to our work. And those were room temperatures in that floor that we were provided, Campus Kluge, the 5th floor and Campus Arena, CO2 emission for each of those rooms, and occupancy status. And we wanted to visualize this data in a way that is useful, usable for members or students. We've faced some flaws dealing with each of the 2 APIs that we've had. And with Siemens, we have discovered that it's not handling missing data, even though the data is generated with a constant frequency. Mitigation for that flow was that we manually reconstructed the missing timestamps. And there's a lot of 2 things that are way too technical for me, but you can ask Omer later about, and he will tell you in detail. It's been much more useful. And the API also fails to return anything after the 5th page, which was fixed by manually generating a new URL from the last retrieved timestamp after every 5th call. Another issue that we faced with it is that it records data every 5 minutes for each of the rooms for every data meter. However, it updates the API every 1 hour with an even longer delay, making the last recorded value unusable when it comes to real-time uses and visualization. However, for that case, we're only showing the last recorded value until a predictive model is complete and usable to show real-time data that is useful. As for the Helvar API services, it is currently available for anyone. If they check the link, it's available there with multiple services. And with more advantages, such as the update frequency is every 30 seconds for each event. However, the data collected by Helvar is just motion-based, since they are a light company, and the motion sensors are there to help with automating the lighting system in each of the rooms. However, the data collection was not very useful when it came to historical data and machine learning when it comes to knowing which rooms are most popular, because the data only got collected, or it began being collected just about a month ago, and during July everyone's offline, like everyone's having vacation, so we didn't get the data that we needed to get historical data uses from it. Helver was very transparent with dealing with us, and they have actually noted that there will be missing data due to connectivity issues, which they will be working on fixing. We're using Helver API for real-time applications, which I will get into more in just a bit. For the application has been set in a way that the missing data do not really affect it, in such a bad way, and it remains usable. The lack of sensor mapping, because we're using the 3D model to visualize everything, we need to know each sensor exactly where it is on the floor. And that was not provided in the API, so we had to do that manually for each of the sensors in each of the rooms. Helver is used for the most part with us. It has high reliability, transparency, and cooperation from the company as well. The API is constantly updated whenever we have a request for a new update in the API. The developer from Helver's part has been very responsive and very helpful with that, keeping everything up to the highest bars. With Siemens, there's only a few rooms are covered with the sensors. So the final application looked a bit lacking, which we were able to mitigate with Helver's data as well. However, since only motion event-based data is provided by Helver, Siemens is used for temperature and the air freshness of each room, the status, how healthy it is for people to use it. As for the in-house API, the details of what is used in the coding, Python, and the other frameworks could be, when we go to the questions, Umer could say so much about that. However, it features two main services. The main status of that one floor, Campus Klubi, and the other one is historical data, also from Siemens, and the application is to know which rooms are most popular and to know what sort of uses, how effectively used each room has. Our initial ideas with such a learning process exploration project, there was so many ideas flowing around from the very first meeting. How could we use the temperature and the data in a way that is adjustable and very useful to have a preference-based room to each user. However, with the resources and the issues that we faced, we found that to be not very practical. First of all, it was noticed that within a floor, the temperature is, the changes are very, very small and they are not very effective or useful. The resources were not acquired yet at the very first meeting, so the expectations were very high from the project as a whole. And we all that was asked from us is to achieve a proof of concept and find the flaws of the APIs, which we have managed to do. After getting the Helver data, we have decided to make a pivot with our direction with the prototype, and that went into occupancy because it is at the nearest future point, it is the most usable for students and faculty alike. And I would like to show you.
Probably will not work.
Probably will not work. Okay, is there absolutely no way to show the video?
I'm reluctant, but let's try.
Okay.
Should fail fast and hard. There it is.
Just a second, I'll take the online people with us. Is it that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did it go? Over there. let's settle with this one.
Yeah.
Do you need voice?
No. This is the most recent build from our prototype. This is the floor with the 3D model, and this is the idle state. Once you interact with it, it moves to the top view. You click on occupancy, and it takes some time to generate. The red rooms are the occupied rooms. It is shown in real time, and it updates every 30 seconds. We have 3, and when you go into each room, it shows further details about that room, such as the name, the last recorded value for the temperature, and the CO2 emission value, which is now shown in percentage. However, will be changed into how healthy the room is and how fresh the air is in that room at any given moment. Yeah, how can I go back to the presentation? Yeah, sorry about that.
Ah.
We have added the uncertainty mode to add reliability to the application, just in case someone is just going to the bathroom or just checking a room. Things to add by the end of August are things I've already sort of mentioned. As you can see, we're going to use the 24-hour predictions as a weather forecast sort of thing, and also to adjust the last recorded value to something more real-time than an hour ago. As for the value created, it works as a proof of concept for indoor temperature forecasts, better understanding of the rooms and how effectively they are used. That is a value created for the management. And knowing what rooms are occupied. Also, I believe that's especially relatable in Finland, that you don't want any awkward encounters with people in meetings and stuff. As the project, if it's picked up for further development, it could include the reservation system of the whole university campus and be more implemented on mobile devices with the students as well to use for their daily uses of the campus. As noise data included and sentiment analysis for each of the study rooms. And that's it. Thanks. Any questions? You can ask more technical questions because Ali and Umar will also be able to answer.
So you took the prototype of campus arena building, or
Yes.
the second floor where there is like
The fifth floor.
Fifth floor.
Yes.
Okay. Did you think about considering temperature when there is like a change in temperature data when there is like already an occupied room and there are people over there? Because I think the more people you have in a room, the emission of carbon dioxide extend.
Yes. Which, when using the app, we've actually noticed that when a room is occupied, the CO2 emission percentage is higher.
Yeah.
As for the temperatures, because of the regulations, they're always like limited to a very range.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really go that much higher. Maybe maximum, I believe, half a degree or maybe a degree tops that we've noticed so far.
It's always between 21 and 23.
Yeah.
Never goes beyond or under this mark.
All right, I have two questions.
Yes.
The biggest problems with the APIs that you had during your implementation, what were the problems? Did you have any kind of problems? Can you come here too, so the voice actually goes to the net, so speak here somewhere.
So as mentioned by Anas, that we face some challenges with the API. So the very first thing that we noticed was that we weren't getting enough data despite mentioning the timestamps correctly. So so we had to like manually fix that. So what we did was we after every 5 the last timestamp, and we took the timestamp and recreated the request and continued to do that till the very end. So that was like our manual hack to fix that. Second,
there was no option to actually tell who's responsible for the API to fix it.
yeah, we actually wrote them and we just like asked them if you guys can fix it ASAP, and they were like, the development team is in another country, so it's gonna take a
We
while.
faced a lot of cooperation.
Okay.
So we were like, okay, so let's not let this thing bog us down. So we went with a manual hack. So secondly, initially the inspiration was to develop a predictive model for indoor temperature. So when it comes to prediction, when it comes to machine learning, we need like a ginormous amount of data. But unfortunately, that was missing because our primary API, which we were counting on, was Siemens, and they only had data for last 3 months. So ideally, you wouldn't want to train a model which would sort of overfit the data from which it has learned. So you would want like historical data, and when it comes to temperature forecasting, temperature predictions, the research papers I have read, they usually use like data that spans over a decade or a decade and a half. So unfortunately, we didn't have enough data, but we tried to use the data we had, and we managed to come up with a working predictive model, and we sort of moved on from that because our idea was to just give a proof of concept that tells, okay, this can be done. Given you have enough data, the accuracy of this predictive model can be improved. So these were the challenges we faced. Missing data. So they have like a constant frequency with which they're getting data, and the API returns the data. But it just turned out that for the timestamps, they don't have any data. The API doesn't indicate any information about those. Those timestamps are like completely missing. So an ideal implementation would be timestamp and then telling us for some weird reason, the data is not available. It could be because of the sensors are off because of maintenance, or there's no internet, or it could be so many different. Just so that the recipient could know that, okay, this is a timestamp and there's no data available. So for that, we had to use different imputation techniques like forward filling, take the last value of the last timestamp and just fill forward. And then there was another one which was to replace missing values with the average of the whole data set. So we went with the average one.
So sounds to me that did they actually provide you any kind of documentation for the APIs?
Yeah, unfortunately, although the API was very simple, there wasn't any documentation provided.
Would it help to do?
Actually, it would have helped had there been a documentation, at least for the missing value part, because it was just like since when you were training deep networks, they're like very regimental about the number of data points and the batch size. So I sort of found it by accident that, okay, there is something wrong with the data because data from different sensors, they're not adding up. Then the amount of data is not the same. So on the other hand, I think that had there been documentation, they would have already fixed the missing value problem and the like insufficient data points problem, because obviously this is something whoever has developed the API has overlooked these issues. It's not by like they haven't done it like on purpose. So had there been documentation, had they been that detail oriented, they would have already fixed these problems.
All right.
Also, if I may add, there's another problem related to the hierarchy.
Can you please
Yeah,
go over
sure.
there and talk about the great things?
As you know, already we are dealing with buildings, and buildings means rooms and floors and rooms. And what we noticed is from the provider's perspective, they don't need this physical notion of rooms on floors. They consider the whole building as one entity, and they only deal with the IPs basically. So when we were using Siemens and Helver IPI both, it was very hard for us to know where the sensors are. Even though Helver's IPI was pretty reliable, it was pretty much useless for us without this very specific information. Where is the sensor? So we couldn't, at first, we couldn't use those information without this hierarchy. Where is the sensors? Yeah, and even though internally it didn't make any sense for them to make this room notion, to make the API usable, it's necessary for to create it. So yeah, that's one of the biggest problems we faced.
And what was the fix?
Yeah, the fix was manually
Another hack.
map everything, and since we were only working with one floor, it took us a lot of time just to map 200 sensors in one floor. And the idea is to expand this to all buildings, and that's why a standard system or process is necessary. Without a standard, there's no way of expanding this to all buildings. And yeah, it was such a pain to do it for just one floor. So it's really impossible to do it for all buildings. Yeah.
So is it so that there are no standards on this area for the data models of the APS for industry standards?
They have their standards, but if we want to link the information they have with the physical world, they don't have like a real link between them. So we had to guess based on, for example, a description, or ask them where is this sensor, and we had to search on the plans for the building. So it took us a lot of manual work just to guess where the sensors are.
Yeah, because like physically we understand the notion of a room, right? So it's like a physical square or rectangular area, and there are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sensors. But I wouldn't say it was like completely absent in the API, but it was very weak. And other than that, there was no way to access it like through an API, this information. You'd have to go the navigator dashboard and look at it, and it's just like it's there, but it's not programmatically accessible.
How old these installations are, if mapping is such difficult to do?
How old are
I
these
mean, how
installations?
long time the installations has been?
I think Campus Arena is a fairly new building because it was inaugurated back in 2015, so
Yes.
two years or so.
So after since they didn't know which sensor is named or identified, how in the map of
Well, what we've noticed is that when they've been placed, the use for these sensors and data was not what we're doing. It was more about building automation. In which case, I believe when they did their studies, it was not necessary to do the mapping. And this project just came and explored these new areas and found these issues. So that's where they would have to step up that part of their game.
Yeah, you're using the tools out of their normal business case.
Exactly, because this is like but what you're doing is very novel in nature. And I get a feeling that Siemens has not done it for any other vendor, because if they had done it, like this data API would have been very robust if they had done it for any other vendor, like for any other client.
Maybe because I have worked with the guys during the summer, I might comment on a couple of things. The model is really important, so that the model developers and vendors are sharing similar model. That was my main thing. Also, the value of exploratory project in this kind of thing. If this would have been something that the client does with commercial partners, project budget would have been millions, and the results would actually have been much the same that the guys delivered. And so running a proof of concept project seems really valuable. Also, for anyone who's working with APIs and thinking about this, the amount or the degree by which the guys have been gravitating towards more responsive vendor, the Helvar was actually offering them support is significant. So pretty much Helvar, the minor vendor, has taken over their interest by just being responsive and doing, I think, 2 or 3 updates a day. Your API based on your.
Yeah, we asked Siemens to do OnePlex. They never did it. We asked Helvar 3 times, and they always did.
And I would guess that in terms of winning mind share, that would be generalizable. So when developers respond to vendor support.
So, any other questions?
Well, thanks for listening.
Now it's your show.
And
You can do it.
maybe if people want to take coffee.
Yeah.
Where did you get this picture?
Send it to me. Okay. So do we have free to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent.
No, you are here.
Yes, came a bit late. We don't have your presentation.
Yes.
I'm still online. Online. Excellent.
Over. Super.
So introduce the guests. So
Okay. So we have our surprise guest or speaker here, Ritu Kanulainen, and he is from Ultimate AI. So he will be talking about why chatbots are hard, like for development and maintaining, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like that.
Thanks a lot.
Otanko lataanko vai?
mä voin laittaa.
Joo.
I lost it. I lost your presentation. Sorry about it. Just a second. Where did it go? Yeah, there. Okay. Now we're back on track. It's that one. Yes, and now. And then we are ready to go.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Ritu Kanulainen. I'm the CEO and founder of Ultimate AI. And I'm here to talk about why chatbots are hard, why you should do them and should not do them. Basically, it's just a small introduction about me. I'm a TUT alumni almost. It's just one thesis away from it. Founded the company in 2014, and we're now a team of 9. Basically, what we do is we teach machines to understand human language. So you could say that we build the brains of those chatbots. So when you talk to a chatbot, it should understand what you are saying. And just to clarify what I consider as a chatbot, I know there's a lot of Facebook bots currently because they are the thing that don't use natural language, so they're just buttons and pictures. I personally, because I come from customer service world, I consider those more like apps, and I consider chatbots as something you have a conversation with. So just to clarify. Okay, that's
Might be slow.
yeah. I'm really hesitant on those. Yeah, so team of 9 currently, engineering heavy, so to speak. 3 founders, 2 in the sales and marketing, and then the rest are basically building the deep learning algorithms and also building the interfaces for those algorithms. And this talk won't be a lot about how we use APIs, but I'm more than happy to have a conversation afterwards. This is more on what are those chatbots and what are the biggest challenges of those, because I think they can be interfaces of APIs, so to speak. So you have a conversation with an API when you have a conversation with a chatbot. So if you don't know the challenges of chatbots, you might build something nobody wants to use. So I want to focus on that. Yeah, so based in Tampere, now also in Helsinki, and did a little detour in Dubai. So we're trying to manage with the growth. Business is going well, and there's a big demand on these AI bots, and we try to keep up with the demand and the hype. And we have learned the challenges of those chatbots. So I think chatbots have been around like from the 60s, and I've seen a lot of videos from these talks about chatbots. So I don't want to go too deep on those, but basically. A year ago, Facebook launched the chatbot platform. Everybody started building chatbots, and then everybody realized that they don't really work. They are like, I think the hype was so strong that people thought that these are these alien sentient beings that came to our world, and now we can have a talk with them, and they're smarter than people. And then people started trying them, and they can't even understand when I say, "Hi, what's up?" And then they feel really disappointed. And now there's kind of a second wave coming that people started to focus on those algorithms and how to make them actually understand us. And people are projecting the next wave of chatbots, but we'll see where it goes. Just a technical background. Why now? Why not 10 years ago? Well, everybody have heard of AI and deep learning and machine learning and all those nice words. Some of them actually work. So, for example, speech recognition 5 years ago or something like that, the accuracy was 70%. So almost every third word was missed totally. So you can't really use Alexa in 2010 because it won't understand what you're speaking. Last year, the accuracy went over 95% thanks to deep learning. That means that it's basically better than a human, at least in these test scenarios. But what this makes is that you can actually have these Alexas or Google Home at your home, and you can build these applications to them, and only because the algorithms are good enough that they can understand you speak. So that's why I just want to emphasize that it's really important to build these really kind of low-level algorithms before we start kind of hyping stuff up. I know you've seen, or if you check the videos from previous talks, you've seen this picture. Usually people say, why chat? Well, because of this. Top 4 messaging apps are bigger than top 4 social networking apps. This just means that people like to use WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and so on. And everybody's kind of then start to think that maybe we, as a brand, we should go to those channels where the customers are already. We go to WhatsApp, we go to Facebook Messenger and have a conversation. And because those are so huge, Facebook has billions of users, you can't have a billions of conversations simultaneously, which then you have those bots to deploy on. So this is actually a quite good diagram on different kinds of bots. So the easiest ones are these rules-based bots. If then that, basically. So I ask a question and then say, when somebody asks this question, answer with this exact answer. And then when I have a closed domain, so I'm not trying to build a Siri, I'm maybe building on, let's say, an FAQ bot or whatever, a recipe bot or so on. So it's much easier to know what you can actually ask. And those are the most easiest ones to build. You can't really build a rules-based bot on open domain. So building a Siri with all different variations of questions is kind of impossible. Then you have these generative bots, which are really interesting and really hard, meaning that they are not rules-based, and usually even the answers are generated by the AI. When the domain is closed, you can kind of anticipate what people are asking, or maybe you have a good data set for that, but still it's really hard to make those work because machines can't really, it's really hard for machines to understand the semantic meaning of things. They can produce kind of a correct language, but it might not make any sense to us humans. So it's kind of doable, but it's really hard. And then if you build a generative bot that works on open domain, so can talk about everything, you basically build a general AI, and that's good for you, but I think that won't happen for a while. So these are kind of the 4 categories, and everybody is currently in the rules-based category, and some are, maybe some research is being done in the generative closed domain bots. Kind of the background of the technology, we started with these hard-coded rules in the 60s and 90s, and still many use hard-coded rules or regex or something like that. The problem is that when I ask how are you, or how are you without the question mark, or how are you, you have to map all of those, and it's quite easy to see that it's really hard to do and build those bots, or it will take, I know there are some bots like that people have worked on like 20 years and they start to become quite okay, but still I wouldn't want to spend 20 years building this. I think after the 90s they came these statistical methods, usually meaning a bag of words. So let's do some basic statistics on the sentences and try to figure out what's the meaning. And what they basically do is they look at the words that are in the sentence. Usually they remove all the kind of the most common words. So there's the stop words which you remove, like I are usually the keywords. And then you use those to, for example, do a search. Many are using this, I forgot the name of the search engine, something like, but yeah, there's a lot of search engines, open source, which work quite nicely, but they are still using just the keywords. And with the keywords, you lose a lot of meaning of the sentence. So yeah, maybe if you can strip away, like I forgot my password, and then the forgot password, you might find the correct answer. But then if you have, this is kind of a typical example, if you have a medical report saying that patients' white cells are destroying cancer cells, or cancer cells are destroying white cells, I don't know if this is medically correct, but the sentences are really similar, but the word order is different. And these back-of-word statistical methods would consider these exactly the same thing. And it might be kind of catastrophic if the machine would say that this patient is having a great time. It's working really well, even if it's not. So I think now people are focusing a lot with deep learning, even though there's a lot of debate in the natural language processing world. But if you have a lot of data, you can, in theory, kind of find these really small nuances in these sentences. And for example, in let's say I want to get the sentiment of this sentence, I'm not, the back of words models would see that I have an exciting, brilliant, great. They would actually consider this to be really positive. But because I have the negation in the end, this is actually a negative review. And deep learning models could actually pick these really small nuances of those sentences and say that this is a negative review, or that this is somebody who's, yeah, so basically a negative review. And that's why these are really powerful, and what we believe that is kind of the future of these conversational interfaces. Just a quick dip to deep learning. So basically, people think that they're these magic boxes, that you have this architecture where you have these neurons and then layers of those neurons. And when you have designed the architecture really well, you just feed in a lot of data. This is a picture example because it's easier to kind of wrap around your head. So you can feed a lot of pictures to this network and then see what the result is. Let's say there's 4 different classes. Is it the banana or an apple or a monkey? And then when the network makes a guess, you correct it if it's wrong or right, and then use the error to kind of calculate the weights of kind of the neurons again. And you do this few million times, and you actually have created a network that you can feed in a completely new picture, and it will tell what it is, because each of the layers have picked up different features, so kind of they focus on different things. So in here, the first layer is kind of focusing on edges, the second of like combination of edges, the last is focusing on these faces, and then you have the 4 different classes coming out. And these are really good because you don't really you program them, yes, but you don't really kind of actively develop and add more stuff. It's just like how you design the architecture, and then it's mainly about the data you feed in. And with pictures, you've seen with self-driving cars, this works really well. And also with language, you have a lot of data, and if you can actually pour a lot of annotated language data to these models, they actually provide state-of-the-art results. Another thing is that people like to use is use word vectors, or kind of this vector representation of words or sentences. This is actually a picture from Google, but this is just a nice visualization. So semantically similar things grouped together kind of inside the range of the network in a way that you can have with words. You can have a king and a ruler quite close to each other. So then when somebody is talking about the ruler, you know that he's talking about the king. And then these are from Google's neural translator. Similar sentences are kind of close to each other though. So there's 3 different sentences in this small cluster, and they all mean the same thing, and they actually are all with different languages. So you can actually kind of make this better by adding new languages, and that's something Google has made quite successful. So they trained the neural translator, and now they deploy it to all languages, including Finnish. They had some problems in the beginning with the names of the Finnish people, but now they've fixed it. So these are really important when you use these deep learning networks. Just a quick kind of, many of you might seen similar things on how these chatbots then work when they use deep learning, for example, or other methods, is that we use this thing called slot filling. I don't know if you're familiar with other kind of APIs like API.ai or with AI and so on. They also use this similar concept. So you don't, for example, when we train our network, we don't train like from question to answer. So we ask a question and the network outputs an answer. We actually use kind of this thing called intent. So it's kind of a variable, basically, that tries to represent what's the meaning of the sentence. So here I say I need a book a flight. So intention is a variable called flight query. So it's like a name of a function, for example. Then you have these slots, or somebody can use the word entities, or there are other things, but in research they use slots. So you have these slots which are kind of the key words. So in here, a slot is New York and Helsinki. And how the slot filling works is quite nice because you can say that, hey, if somebody wants to book a flight, we need to do a flight query, and then we need variables from, to, and then time. And you can imagine how these fit into, for example, API calls. So let's say I need to book a flight, and the network gives me that, okay, there's a flight query, but there's 3 variables missing. We need to ask them, and then you start to fill those slots. You ask, where are you going to New York? And you fill that slot to New York. Where are you departing from Helsinki? When are you willing to fly tomorrow? And you don't have to you don't even have to build this order. You just have to say what needs to be filled to be able to query the API, and the network or the chatbot does the asking of the important values. And this is something I would imagine that would be really beneficial when having conversations with APIs, or if you have a Slack bot. This is how they should work. I know many of them don't work yet, but this is kind of a new thing. Then, why are the chatbots so hard? So actually what I'm here to talk about, there's a lot of things why they are hard. I realized later that I just gave a lot of reasons why they are hard and no explanations how to overcome those things, but we're going to have the conversations later.
Yeah, over pizza.
Yeah, oh yeah. I counted on that. So basically, one thing what is hard, this is what I picked on Reddit. It's kind of a little unsuitable for work, but it's really hard to predict what people are asking. So when you have a bot and you have to design the answers, you have to kind of write the answers, the people might ask whatever, even though you say this is a pizza ordering bots, people start asking what's the weather and so on. It's really hard to predict what people are asking, and when they can't have the answers, they're not getting, they are disappointed. And what we are doing when we do this enterprise customer service automation, we take all of their chat historical logs and kind of analyze those and kind of try to find what people are actually asking. Because when you know what people are asking, you can kind of do really well, even though you wouldn't be using the latest state-of-the-art methods. With regex, you might be build a good bot when you just know what people are going to ask, but people are really unpredictable. Then the AI part is that how they are asking it. It's kind of, I've seen a lot of different kind of chat logs and conversation and real data, how people are having the conversations in chats, and it's kind of it's really hard for humans to understand the other humans. What is this person asking? Because it's so many, you can ask the same thing so many ways. So that's, I think, one of the biggest thing, or two of the biggest things why the Facebook bot launch kind of dipped, because people were asking, having conversations, and the machines didn't have the answers, and then they couldn't understand the answers even they had them. And then kind of the biggest thing in everything, like everybody asks how to build a good chatbot, is usually like, does a chatbot bring value? This equation, like, are you building chatbots because of chatbots are cool, or is the chatbot actually bringing some value that no other technology or app or website wouldn't bring? And that's why, like, a pizza ordering bot, like, I know, like, I heard the Koti pizza bot is quite nice, but still, like, is that the best use case for chatbots? So you should really just be solving problems, and solving problems in a way that a chat is the best interface to do that, and an automated chat. And then it kind of gets easier. Then you can focus on the more smaller things like what are people asking and so on. But you should always start with, is the chatbot actually bringing value? And what I consider like really good is, well, we work with customer service, so we see that as a good opportunity for chatbots, because let's say in customer service operations, there's like 50 humans in these small cubicles answering the same questions every day about opening times and so on. So I don't see that that's really the future of humanity. So I think that bots can bring a lot of value to that equation, because then we wouldn't remove the humans, we would just move their work in this. For example, they would selling the products in the chat, or assisting with more advanced stuff instead of just writing the same things over and over. And kind of easy to build chatbots is that I like Slack chatbots are actually quite good, some of them, and I believe that they bring value. And there's a lot of them already, so I know a lot of you can use those to do Scrum meetings and so on. They're actually quite nice. So it's not completely hopeless. And then one big thing is always the hype. So all of the big companies went in with the chatbots, and you have the Watson that won Jeopardy, and Watson cures cancer and answers your questions and is a lawyer. And then kind of you build up these expectations, and then the other ones come that, hey, let's build a chatbot, and people expect that this will be kind of the next big thing, this alien thing that comes to our organization and helps everybody with everything. And then you build it with, even though it might be really good, but you will never meet the expectations, and then you will fail, basically. So what we do with most customers, we kind of like try to lower the expectations. I know there are a lot of good customers that already know what's the status quo, but we basically just like lower the expectations, narrow the scope, and say that there's an investment for the future, and that's the best way to move forward. But it's really hard when, let's say, your company is selling chatbots. It's really hard not to overpromise and underdeliver, because the expectation is already really high when customers come in. And even though you say them that this is chatbot for, let's say, booking a flight, and it's like that's the only thing it does, and then you deploy it, and people ask, hey, what should I do next weekend? And it will say, sorry, I didn't understand. Oh, this is a bad bot. But it's kind of funny, but like managing expectations is also a really big thing in chatbots. Yeah, basically.
Whoops. Connection.
Oh.
It's shaky.
So I think that was my rant about what are kind of the worst, like what are the bad things about or hard things about chatbots. I would like to have a few slides on maybe what's the future, or what AI might bring to the conversational interfaces. And this is kind of related to APIs also, is that there's a lot of research going on with question and answering systems. So instead of us tailoring the answers or building templated answers, we could actually just give a lot of, for example, a book to a machine, and then ask questions about the book. And the machine would do deductions and answer you hopefully correctly. And maybe in the future you could have APIs, and the machine could actually, you could ask stuff, and it could kind of do deductions of the from the API, or the data from the API, and give you answers. And these are I'm not seeing these like this won't be the year 2017, but maybe somewhere in the future, like these really actually working expert systems, not the ones they had in the 90s. And this is one, like these deep learning models can actually get right. There's this Facebook Bobby data set that has these kind of challenges, and it's kind of a bit of scary also, like how well they can actually deduct stuff. I had to think of it, but the answer is Charlie in this one. Yeah. Good. And this was kind of our experience in experiment in generative bots. So we built this Twitter bot that it was a recurrent neural network that learned or read Kalevala and learned the structure and how to write Kalevala, and then we asked it to write more, and it generated these poems by itself. And this is completely a copy paste, so this is really unedited. And what was really interesting is that it actually learned in Finnish it's Kalevala runomitta, meaning that there's 8 syllables in each line. So if you start counting, it actually has 8 syllables in each line, and then basically the line breaks. So it's really interesting that you could actually learn these structures of written text. And Kalevala is not even that big if you think about it data-wise. I think it was 250,000 words or something like that. But why we chose Kalevala was because you can't really understand the original version. So even though this is semantically doesn't make any sense, it kind of it's okay because Kalevala is really hard to understand anyway. And this is what a Stanford postdoc did with Trump. So basically the same thing, but all of the tweets of Trump. And you should really follow Deep Trump. It's actually really good, and it starts to get really good with kind of also with semantics and and I don't know, maybe it's the mirror to the mind of Trump, but it's really interesting. And I like how this relates to chatbot is that I don't see a future where people build these chatbots and they kind of manually write the answers. Maybe you have to do it now, but in 10 years, hopefully you're not doing it. You're actually, these networks are generating, you're teaching them to answer in a different way. And then you just feed in the important data to the chatbots and they will kind of do the deductions for you. And that's the future I'm hoping for. Just as a summarize, they are hard because we don't understand what are their strengths, where you should use chatbots and where you shouldn't use. And when you use something somewhere that you shouldn't be using, it's always bad. But that's with everything. Also, we don't really know what people are asking from the bots because people are really unpredictable, and it might be even that you communicated it wrong. People didn't understand what it is. And that's the third point, is that people don't know what they should ask or what they can do. You have a chatbot, you say, hello, and then it says hello, and then like, what are you doing? Why are you here? What should I do? So it's really kind of hard as a consumer to use chatbots if there isn't guidance from the bot. Or if you have a Slack bot, usually they have this really good intros on what you can do. But still, there's a lot of improvement they should do. The AI is still not there to have these actually conversational kind of use cases. We have a few demos or use cases with kind of this, you just FAQ style, you bring the correct answers, and then these really conversational versions. And the good and bad thing is that with the FAQ style, the good thing is that you get the answers you're looking for, but it's really limited. If you ask something else, it will say that I cannot understand, or I redirect it to a human. Then you have the really conversational version where the AI generates the answer, or there's a huge amount of data behind it, but it's really hard to predict what the machine is actually answering. And then when you bring those to enterprise world, that doesn't really work. But the AI is going there. I think even though natural language is a really hard problem, I think we are moving really fast, and hopefully in the future we can get as close with the accuracy as the speech recognition. Some say that natural language is AI complete problem. So to understand language, you need to understand life itself. You need to understand what is love and what is hate to be able to talk with humans. And it might be true, but still, I don't think you need to build general AI to actually have these really good chatbots. And then the hype is too strong. So when you can defend the hype, you can actually provide value to customers. And just like try to avoid the mistakes of the past with these. I know there's been like, this is the fourth AI boom, and all three were a bust, but I hopefully here we can be really practical with these chatbots and build good use cases of them, which is why I think there is future for these bots. We need to just be careful of where we use them. And I'm happy to have a conversation with you guys. So please ask questions about experiences or anything, and I'll answer them. The first one.
Have you been thinking about finding new ways of doing small talk chatbots? It's completely new. Nothing so that chatbot learn human languages.
So doing small talk.
Or the conversation.
Yeah. Well, like what you can do is you can use these generative networks. Let's say you can take Well, for in English, you can take like all posts of Reddit, which is like billions, and train the machine to have a conversation. And when you ask something, it will just predict what's the most probable answer. But then you have zero control, or basically the answers are what the data set is, and it's kind of it's dangerous, so to speak.
Way too generic.
Sorry?
That would be like way too generic.
Yeah. One is that you could actually have this kind of auto-generated templates, which you fill in with data, and that's something we are kind of looking into. So you do something manually, but the rest is generated. And then I know there are some other kind of data sets that you can use to train some sort of generative stuff, but still use kind of these static answers combined. But it's really hard because like now we have kind of the opposite sides of things. So how to go with the middle? I think we need to kind of think completely something new, but haven't really don't have the answer to that yet.
And perhaps people should learn some new ways of communicating instead of trying to machines who try to copy people languages.
Yeah, let's try to learn binary.
Yeah. That's the correct answer. And the problem is that humans are really hard to change, so I think it's easier for machines to change.
Actually, sorry, on your behalf, like we are not usually very considerate when we are talking to bots. We feel like whatever I'm going to ask the bot, it is going to answer. It is supposed to answer. So whatever the domain is, I think we should be a bit considerate and we should like lower our expectations when we are communicating with bots. Obviously, someone who has a technical background has this like preconceived notion that okay, so this is not as intelligent as people might think that it is. But for like general people, they're like, okay, let's bust this chatbot.
I don't even really like the word chatbot because it's so generic. Like, because let's say we use this in customer service automation, so it's the front line. It gives the quick answers to kind of I go to a bank and I ask about an opening time or whatever. I just want the answer, nothing else. I don't want to have a conversation. I just want to ask because it's so complicated. I just want to ask. When I get the answer, I'm happy. That's it. A good bot. Then I have a Slack bot, and I know what to do with it. Let's say I can interact with an API. I know what to kind of ask. I know what kind of API there is. I can ask, give me this and this from last year and so on. And it works. But then, like, when you think of chatbots as kind of just chatbots, then people start having conversations, and then like,
So there is this way that when we were studying EEST, that they say that whenever you are designing for a chatbot, maybe just mention it on its own, like when it's interacting with a user, that I am a silly chatbot. I can answer in a very limited how to say that.
Disclaimer.
Yeah. So it's like a disclaimer, so that even if you are not a tech person, just a normal user, like maybe a grandma is coming to ask that when the shop is going to open, they can just like understand that okay, it's just a chatbot or
and it's about managing the expectations. And like if you think about that, people should learn how to speak to bots. Like, well, what about when I use the terminal? I basically interact with the bot. I give commands and it does what I want to do. Kind of that's the extreme example of that. So I have to know what's the sudo ch blah 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 blah. So that's kind of also having conversations with machines, but then it's not really natural language. So, but it's not. Chatbots are not really black and white. That it's a bot that knows everything or a bot doesn't know anything.
Do you have any favorite bots, kind of bots you use kind of regularly and you think they are made well?
I don't. Well, yeah, I do actually. I use few messenger bots. I use this bot from I don't know which university it was, but it's basically this. It's not meditation bot, but it's basically just checks in every day and asks how are you doing, what are you feeling, and it's kind of this journaling bot. And I actually really like that because it's kind of reminds me to kind of do some reflecting. And there was some research that they actually boost mental health and so on. That's something that's actually really good. I tried it and kind of got hooked. I use few bots as RSS feeds, so I get news from the RSS feeds I want because I don't want to have an RSS reader. I don't know how to download them, so I just want a few RSS feeds to my Facebook Messenger, and that's it. And then on Slack you have this, I don't know what's the name of it, but this you have this kind of this Pomodoro bots basically. So and then this daily meetup. So it asks what did you do today? Because we as a company, we each day we write what we did and what we're going to do. So we use those. Yeah, but again, they are really specific to this specific thing.
Personally, I have tried the Koti pizza bot and Kauppalehti and this business news bot, and that somehow I got irritated because even that I switched it off, it still gave me the offers. So I removed it after a couple of days.
And that's really like hard because we had one experiment with the client that we built this trade show bot, and people had a conversation. And after the trade show, we sent a push message on. We never did that before. Send a push message. How did it go? And they were like shut the why are you messing? It's really personal. We kind of invade their privacy because it's their messenger, and now they're getting these push messages that they don't want to get. And it's not like spam email. It's really personal. So it's really you can really destroy the relationships quite easily with those bots.
Have you met any challenges in authentication and authorization conversational databases?
Well, not a lot of challenges in a way that couldn't be tackled. Like you can do authentication inside the kind of the chat or deploy or go and log in and come back and get the context. We don't build the chat software. We usually build the plugins to other software. So they already might have the contextual information available through APIs to us. So we haven't had a lot of problems, but the use cases have been really simple.
Maybe to follow up a little bit on that your stuff goes as a plugin. How do you see the business side of that going? Is it going to be custom or particular users in chatbots, or are they going to be services so that could be sort of used generic services and maybe not?
Yeah. So well, I have a long answer. So one is that we have the whole architecture we have is really big. So we do a lot of stuff with language. For example, we have our own lemmatizer, meaning that we take the lemma of a word, which is kind of the base form of a word. And that's really important in Finnish because like for the word kauppa, you have 2,000 different inflections, which means that machine sees 2,000 different words. So if you can get those to one, the dictionary is really small. And that's something we actually are considering maybe releasing as an API because that's something that's really hard. And since we've done a lot of work with it, then why not? For example, we did the integration to SAP. We actually helped them open their APIs to build these bot integrations. And we try to build everything with them in a way that it's generic as possible because people are already using the same systems in the backend with CRM or whatever. So we can actually build this kind of, at least the integration is generic. But then when we have a customer, there is, at least at this point, there is some custom work to be done as what use cases, for example, if they want to track something, or you can ask about your package or whatever, there's some custom work. But we as a company try to build this kind of, be as generic as possible because we don't want kind of training this one language model in a way that the intents we build are generic. So let's say I have an intent like fetch opening time or fetch location. We use those with every customer. So when some customer gives us more data, it kind of populates the whole knowledge. So at some point, and then they are per domain. So let's say airlines, telcos, and so on. So at some point, we could just have these modules that, hey, there's an airline, so add these and these and these, and then these specific use cases, and then a few kind of more custom use cases, and you're good to go. Because that's really hard with deep learning, that you need a lot of data. And if you have to start from the beginning with every customer, it takes a lot of time. So we try to build this kind of cumulative network. But yeah, usually with chatbots, I know that everybody is doing kind of a project work per customer. But I don't know, in the future, I don't see that as a good option, especially when you're working with big companies. It takes a lot of time.
I actually have a question to you, which is like a few days ago, I think you read the news that Facebook actually shut down 2 of their chatbots because they were actually communicating with each other using their own coded language. So what do you think about this? Like, what went wrong over there, or where the chatbots were starting to become rogue or anything? What is like your thinking about it?
I think it was just a bad algorithm that wasn't working well enough, and they closed it and then maybe did some changes and made another one. So I don't see that. It was kind of it was really sensationalist article that they invented their own language and went out of control, and we had to plug it out.
Yeah.
I think it's just like, let's say we train a generative network and it just gives us question marks. It doesn't work, so we shut it down, change it, and train it again. So I wouldn't be worried. I think it's just some journalist got a bit of.
Yeah, that's a good thing for more.
Yeah.
There was fake news in fact, because the head of AI at Facebook actually posted regarding that post. Nothing of that sort actually happened.
Yeah.
He shut it down because it wasn't.
Yeah.
But they already got like their publicity.
Yeah.
People were like, something like Matrix is going to happen or anything like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
My first question is, do you have any stats which actually back the efficacy of deep learning driven customer service versus the conventional, say, if-then-else sort of customer service?
Well, that's a big question, because let's say if and then means that if you build with those methods, let's say we both know what people are going to ask, and that's one thing you can't really have with this back of words method. It's really hard to analyze the data set, or you can't really pull the most frequent questions from raw chat data. So that's one big thing. But let's say we both know what customers are asking. I have kind of a deep net, and you have back of words or if then. It just means that mine usually works better off the bat and learns faster. You have to kind of constantly build those rules. But I don't know if we don't have any stats on like comparison or anything like.
The companies are adopting it just because it's new and it's interesting, and they just want to invest and see how it works.
Yeah, well, how we work basically is that we usually sell these proof of concept or pilot works projects. So we build everything for them so they can use it, for example, internally. And then if they're happy, they go forward. But they do actually work. But that's not something that you should think that it kind of replaces the customer service. It's just the kind of the front end of it. And one problem is that, let's say you can answer 30% of all the questions. That would be big. 30% of customer service with company of 1,000 customer service representatives, that's hundreds of thousands of euros saved. But when you deploy something like that, or let's say you test, I give you that bot, you test it, it will get 7 answers out of 10 wrong. So it feels like this is really bad. But that's why customer service is really good as a use case, because people actually have really common questions, and they are really similar, and you can have this small amount of answers to serve those. And then when you always have to have a redirection to a human, you never can't say that didn't understand. You have to always send it to a human when you don't know something. And then you can save the human answer and retrain the network basically and make it even better. But I don't have any statistics of like what you do with deep learning or rules-based or whatever. But I would just consider that rules-based is much harder to do. So.
And by rule-based, or like I was actually referring to like the conventional customer service, like chat page, or like even a team of customer support representatives. Second question. So I think you have partly answered this question, but like just to get a complete account for this. So you train a lot of different models. What is like? What is your rule of thumb for training? Do you do it domain-wise, or do you do it like customer-wise? Like the models that you train?
Both, basically. We try to do it as generic as possible, and we have come up with different kind of ways to maybe cluster the meanings of, let's say you're going to have a domain, or you can have let's say a semantic similarity of, you ask like explaining a term might be one intent. You could explain a product or whatever. So there's a lot of different ways you can kind of classify those intents. But currently we've done them as domain and then per customer, because you can't have just generic training. You have the kind of the base, and then you have this kind of this smaller use cases per customer.
So like at the end you do like model merging?
Can't answer that. Can't answer that. Sorry.
So I understand you have your own AI platform. So what benefits you get from it compared to using some generic with AI?
Well, nothing works with Finnish that's available, so that's one. We have something that works, so that's one of the biggest. Like one big thing we did is that many of those, even though they would, like with AI doesn't use deep learning, but some that do use, they do, the abstraction level is words. So they look at the words basically, or they train word by word. And that works for English because the words don't really change. You add an S to the end and it's plural and ta-da, that's it. With Finnish, you can't do that. So we actually had to build a stack with character level. So we can actually take the endings of the words also into account or do the lemmatization. And also, what as a company, we want to have full control. So I don't want to rely on, let's say, with AI, because someday they say that we're not going to do this anymore, or we're going to, Facebook will have, like, I can't just rely on others, or then we want to build something up, make it better, we don't have any access to it. So that's the biggest thing, of course. And also, like, we don't want to just sell stuff. Of course, we do want to sell stuff, but we want to build stuff that's nobody has built before and like push the technology further. So that's also like a motivational thing of the team. With AI in the beginning as the proof of concept and MVP like a year ago, and it won't work. It's hard.
Just curious, like, what is the application now in currently your customer use system?
Basically, they automate these the common parts of their customer service. So these simple questions you get during the day, and the rest are forward to humans. And then, of course, you can handle those questions 24/7. And when there are no humans behind it, the bot can answer, could you explain a bit more, give your email, and then, for example, send an email to their ticketing system, and somebody will get back later. And that's just because people like to use the chat. And enterprises or companies don't have the resources to man the chat. So that's basically the market there.
I used to have really bad experience with asking my Airbnb, and we had a problem with the ecosystem. And then we just post them questions, and then it just automatically replied, and I can recognize that it's not a human. And they just said, for example, 10 issues, but our issue is like 11. So like I have to spend like 4 hours trying to explain like there's a problem with the ecosystem.
Yeah. You should contact them and provide them better solutions.
Yeah, because I think for Airbnb it's the only way to connect.
Interesting. But the problem is really hard. Like it's really hard to understand humans. And those really small things, that there's a small difference here that the machine won't understand. And because people get really pissed when it doesn't work. So you have to get it right. So yeah. But that's also exciting because like that's something, there is a problem there and needs to be solved. It needs people that solve that. So that's why it's motivates us to.
I could ask, you have been working mostly on the customer service.
Yeah.
Have you looked at any others? And one that I'm sort of thinking is about sort of interactions that teachers and students might have, so learning and education. Have you looked at like that?
Yeah, we have talked with a few companies that are in the education space, and I advised one company that maybe build something like that, but not with us. Maybe the problem is for us is that we want to get our hands on the data, and usually on those cases you might not have a lot of data, or then you would have to do a lot of manual work to build those dialogues.
Yeah.
So that's also something we can't just currently handle.
Yeah.
So customer service is kind of the most obvious thing, and then there's the maybe most simple to do. So that's why we've been focusing on that.
That actually is something that we have recognized in the education institution part.
Yeah.
We are not collecting data, and so we can't build a lot of data.
Yeah.
We should start to just collect data.
Yeah, definitely.
So that we at some point will be able to build.
Definitely, like what we can do with a few companies that, for example, outsource humans in the chat. We have a few companies that they go in first and say that, hey, we have this AI partner. First, we'll just do with humans, and then like after 6 months, I will deploy this AI version of it, and then so on and so on, because you need to collect the data. You can do, like, I could, for example, simulate the data quite easily, but then the problem is that I don't know what people would ask, so that might be a lot of work that's not useless. And one thing is that collecting the data, customer service realized is that when people talk human to human, it's always different than when they talk human to bots. So the data is valuable, and we use, for example, transfer learning and all these different things to kind of mitigate that, but still that's also something you need to consider. When you have a bot, people will talk differently to it. Like our first experiment was that we trained on the historical data, and then people used just keywords. The guy started the test with just a keyword, like this one, like price. It didn't get anything right, and we're like, oh well, try to speak up or ask more with natural language, and then it actually worked. So it's all these small things we need to consider. But it's interesting. It's interesting. Like even though chatbots, they seem they are easy, but they're actually really hard.
I can see that we can sort of doing that would actually be a lot of educational.
Yes.
But there's a lot of that actually that kind of trivial interactions between.
Yeah. That's kind of a way to do it kind of dynamically without having to design that. When then ask this, that you can actually just say what you need, and then the machine will handle the rest. And I know Duolingo has, I haven't tried it, but they have the language bots. So you have a French bot, you need to speak French to it. And I think that's a really fun use case, and it will correct you when you it says bonjour, and you say bonjour, and then you have these kind of like a coffee conversations with the bots, and the bot will always correct you if you're wrong. So that's also a funny use case for it, and I think a really good use case.
There's a company called LearnoWatch. I think they're doing something along the same lines, but that's like very preliminary level. They're trying to teach kids using chatbots.
And in education case, I think the sort of the level interaction of interaction might actually it could be like very simple to begin with. I'm going to send you this form and this, but then it's going to go to reflection.
Yeah.
Quickly, and that might be a hard. So when is the student being reflective in their writing?
Yeah, that's true.
So others, any more questions?
Getting hot in here. We can talk later.
So yeah, probably we are going to take a break now, and the pizzas are on their way.
Yes.
But before that, I think everyone can have some tea and coffee.
Yeah.
So please
Yeah,
help yourself. And thank you very much.
Sure.
I actually sent you an email after that.
Yeah, I did. And I did forward to you.
Yeah, and I applied for them, so that unfortunately I couldn't get it.
Okay.
So, yeah, on LinkedIn. I was thinking, like, but before that, sorry, regarding the data switch, I literally found this very complicated. They actually opened the data set and like 400,000 questions, and the use case is similar to what we are doing about like figuring out semantic similarity. So that was like I participated in that, and that was like really exciting. So many different things. Initially, we started with XGBoost, and we just like plug in things and work with there. So we go to like really good base and then like go to features and layers. Then you move to like
Sure.
So we initially started with like our inspiration was two different models. So one was using distance and angle of the question methods, and the other one was using just like it had like embedding layer and followed by another model, and then successively they applied some insulators followed by some like hash numbers. So then we did like so we started with that, but we ended up trying like this over but the thing which caught the position of it's something related to notion that notion like focus on things which is going to be so we just like go through the forums and some of the people figured out that there are limits of the existence. So we just use certain features, certain magic features to explore our lives. So from like learning from
Change that. Yeah. I don't need it. I don't need it.
We do that.
Yeah.
OSTMs. They were really tricky.
It makes perfect sense because I actually happened to have a conversation the guy was so right now I'm writing research but I'm not using those models because some of them I'm focusing
I'm just like, I don't keep This was like the first time I'm posting this one for the first time, so yeah, I'm like nervous already. Kind of also possibly I think she's like an API management developer. So I work there, not their user experience engineer.
Yeah, we're actually getting
Being a business
really good results.
It's of yourself.
We actually one experience was to have this classified.
Yeah. Do we have it over there?
Maybe it's okay,
yeah.
No, also it's really hard. Especially because you need to kind of go to the universe and see.
People that believe in God,
Why?
that's
why one Oi. That one is
I don't know what that is. It's the version of sleep.
vegetarian people. All right. Yeah. Breakfast. Kind of.
One research in Skipper, so directly work with
You're doing like sentence to it or word to it.
While trying to do that,
Because we use like we monitor for it, we call it like representation of sentence. We take like all the word vectors, excluding the top words. You just like take the representation, create a good representation. We expect it to be somewhere in the sentence page. The similar for words, the sentences,
So what we do now is we try to
I just like 2 months and then I saw it.
and then but then we have national cleaning. So we can get hopefully semantically similar sentences, which we can just play with yeah. And then we have the guide from of course, you can do like something like that. Something still it doesn't really give one question. That's also interesting with the market. It's like this huge amount of data. Yes, they have what they do this as well as the Basically, all the professors are providing this. I know Hane had like one question about the paper. You've been working for
I want to buy them, but I will try to I don't know why I didn't check. Later on.
Really, like, it's kind of difficult. It's of course for a client, that is the company that have a person to do it. And we want to figure out how they give time the guys they actually piece that brings think, build the system instead of just hacking something together. Quite certainly, let's say we have a product. Yeah. So people can be systematic. We use other machines to.
Right, grab your pizzas and drinks and sit down somewhere so we can continue. So
we can go home early.
Yeah. Hopefully there's at least some pieces of pizza for everyone, but I didn't know there's gonna be so many people. I was assuming 10, around 10.
Want to present with me something? Together with me?
We have our future capitalist speakers. Trying to see how to get that change it because I know nothing about handling Mac.
All right, the next speaker is the host, so I probably need to introduce her.
You can.
Right, all right. So the next speaker is Nazia, the community manager for API Ops. And she's the UX expert, UX queen. She hates it, by the way, but use it in the Twitter or somewhere. So Nazia, UX queen has that. Community development nowadays, because I handed over the community to her. I'm still in the background, but focusing more on sales channels and everything else in our company at the moment. And she's fastly becoming an expert in API management as well. And today we'll hear about the future of the IoT and the dashboard part of the IoT world itself. What's possibly impossible or hard in that as well? I don't know. Let's hear. Don't tell me I closed it.
No, I don't think you did. Or did you?
Possibly. No. At least now I have it.
You are sweaty. Okay, hello from me again. It's I don't know how like strongly or loosely connected with my topic today here with IoT dashboard, but for a few for the past 2 months or something, I've been working on developing a dashboard which would actually help you to notice about how your APIs are doing, what are their usage, if you are having any problems on that. And today I kind of like Googled to see what is IoT dashboard, and then they gave me an image about their monitoring a city service with its weather or something. Then I thought that, yeah, maybe something similar to that. Probably I've been thinking about or developing the concept. So let's start with this thing. So people often confuse with like what can be a dashboard and what can be an analytics. To me, with my own thesis was also about it, like dashboard visualization and their user experience. And from there, I kind of like gathered this idea that dashboard should be something that gives you the most important or crucial informations, which will actually help you to achieve like one or few goals that you have in your mind. And here we are talking about API management. So as an API owner, or maybe an organization manager who deals with APIs, or even a site admin, you might need to know their system status, or like how they are doing, or even detailed information. So for that, you need both a dashboard and an analytics view. So the analytics are kind of like with that, what the additional information is given on, like maybe list of products, or like the more detailed information about how many users are actually using your API, or how many calls they are making. So to dig deep into that thing. And one thing I want to clarify you that kind of like talking with users and with my thesis, I came to understand that dashboard is not only the solution that you know that to fix up your APIs. It will only let you know that if things are working well, and those information, and then you need to like take up on yourself to actually keep your API alive and healthy and stuff like that. So let's move forward. So I was designing as I told, I was designing a dashboard for API management. So I came to think about what can be the possible stakeholders. So I came out with API owner, an organization manager, as I talked before, and maybe a site admin. So if we think about what are their needs or what goals they wish to achieve with their APIs or API management, I try to classify them based on the stakeholders. If we think about API owners, they want to know that if their API is up and running, based from the dashboard information, or even if a simple thing that your API is slow or it's down, it's helpful for them because their API might be used by lots of consumers, and he might apps might be running on them, and he is generating revenue from them. So he can't really he can really look like make it happen that it's down or something bad is going on with it. And then maybe to think about, to see the trends in anomalies, like if there are too few calls or too many calls, what might be their reason, or even why, if there is this spike in change in response time. And just to predict that if his users are happy, are they using more or just making random calls to see how the API works or just test running it. Then comes an organization manager who can either build or develop his own API or is in a corporation or a company who develops API, and he is taking care of them or leading the development team. So her primary focus is that if all the APIs under her supervisions are going well, just a quick notification or just a quick glance. Or maybe if our company is like has developed a new API and it's on production, and she wants to see what is the usage trend over there, how it is performing, she might want to closely monitor that one. And also with that comes with possible revenue generation possibilities, that how she can use these APIs to monetize her business. And then comes the last stakeholder, which can be a site admin who is in charge of managing and taking care of an API management platform. That he actually sees that if the API's users are like based on the quotation or usage scheme allocated to both API users or consumers, if there is any rude activities or any operations or firefighting works he needs to do in order to make the APIs up and running or like making the site functional. So from these needs, we also kind of try to think about both RESTful APIs and real-time APIs, and whether dashboards should really focus on these things. I guess yes, because the way they function is different. REST API is based on sending client requests and getting server replies based on JSON, XML, or YAML. And in real-time API, the server is always open, kind of like WebSocket, and it always sends you and responds whenever there is an update. And also there matters if what type of proxy you are using to connect your API to get all the analytics data or other stuff, because they function different for different APIs. If you connect your API to a RESTful proxy like API Umbrella, you will get a set of different data, which can be intercrossing, but they are different on their own. And same happens with something like EMQ broker. And then from those proxies, the information or key performance indicators or KPIs in short you get, they would be different when you are representing those data in dashboard. Like, for example, from RESTful APIs, you might get information like request number, response times, and users, or even from a broker like EMQ, you can get like how many clients are actively connected over there, how many messages are going in and out, and maybe the bandwidth utilization of each clients. So based on our primary work and user interviews, we came out with this simple prototype of dashboard, and currently we focused on with RESTful APIs. So it's just a simple table where you get to see, if you are an API owner and you have multiple APIs, that you have that you see your APIs in a list, and they either can appear as like response time or like number of calls, the way you want to sort the lists over there. And they also shows you a trend by week, by last 7 days, or it can be also customized based on last hours or last month. It's up to you by what timeline you want to see the information. And then it also shows you a simple overview about the changes in trend. Like as for example, you can see that there is one API called Apping User API, which had got like 54,000 calls in the, which is like 11% higher than the last 7 days. And even like for Apping Catalog API, the response time is higher, which is like 200 milliseconds, which is like perhaps 25% higher than the last 7 days. So this gives you like things to consider or like to give to like give it an attention that you should really need to take care about it. And then when you click like a specific row of the table, if you are more interested about the usage or trends, you get to see those information reflected in bigger fonts and maybe a trend chart to give you the information that how the API calls have been for the last 7 days, and what proxy API proxy it is using, if the connected endpoint to the proxy is live, how many some happy information like there have been 2xx or successful API responses, which is like 50,000, quite good, I would say, and maybe a small information about errors, or there have been like 24 errors in the last 7 days. And we talked about like more detailed information. When you want to deep down about the reasons, then you can click on show more details, and then we give you the analytics view. Sorry for the small, thank you. I'm sorry for the small picture, but you can see that we in addition for the trends repeated in the previous page, we are showing the request timeline in bigger charts, also the response timeline, and a list of problems which are proxy data represented in a good way or user-friendly way, and maybe most frequent users who like been using it. You want to like make it bigger, or? I think we can skip this part, or like.
Really?
Yeah, because like I would be showing now.
All right.
Okay, thank you. So like to give like some glimpse of the elements in this page, there is like the overview information reflected, and you can see that it's also giving you additional information about the 2x's, 3x's, 4x's, and 5x's calls in case you want more details about what is going on with your API. And then maybe if your API has like more than one endpoints, you might want to know their current status over here. And then by sending HTTP request, you can actually see that how responsive they are, what might be their response time, and how far they're doing. And if an API management platform has like really good feature like setting up threshold values to monitor them and then setting alerts, we can show that this endpoint is like working fine with a green status, or like it's working slow with a yellow status, and even at the worst case, a red line to show that endpoint is down. And for like knowing the requests more, like which endpoint has what kind of response time, responses or something, you can always like select an endpoint from this drop menu, like the one that you saw there, the 4 specific endpoints for this API, and the trend chart will change based on the endpoint that you select. And then you can also probably click on these charts so that they can generate also the trend for showing how many of these responses been 2x's, 3x's, 4x's, or 5x's. And similarly, the API response chart would work like that way. And if you want to really know about what might be the problems your endpoint faced, you can always add a table about it and like have some dates, timestamps on it, that this endpoint faced 2x's request or 5x's request or 4x's request, or it went down. But that also depends on setting up threshold values that this is your response time, and if it is more than this response time, we consider your API to be down. And sorry about that heading being hidden out from there. And if you are an organization manager, your dashboard can be customized that what are your own APIs that you have developed and maintained, and what are the APIs that you as your organization manager take care of or supervise it. Here comes the fact that you just need to glance it and to know everything is fine or not. And for the site admin, this is the thing that you can see in this section, that there is this other APIs which you are not directly managing or taking care of, but having just a monitoring eye over them, that how they are performing. And what would be my next work over here? I have started working with the dashboard monitoring to show like how to show the alerts, or based on what there can be monitoring factors for APIs to know their usage pattern or performance. And next time I would like to design this same thing for real-time APIs, which might be using a proxy broker like EMQ. But for that, I would need user interviews and stuff like that. And last but not the least, alerts and notification. Because like you might be away, not looking at your dashboard, but all of a sudden your API went down, or somehow it spiked a very high response time, and you need to know about this information in instant, perhaps by your email or by mobile or just by a blink of a sound. So that is also important part of a dashboard. So I would be working on this thing. So this is mostly my work done for the dashboard thing of an API management platform. So if you want to ask me any question, you can now.
Does this measure only those APIs that are hosted by somebody running this dashboard, or does this measure also this kind of, let's say, external APIs?
Your APIs first would need to be connected to a proxy, because if your API isn't there, then we might not get the data which can be obtained from proxies to know that what have been your API's number of requests, and how much of them are either like specified calls like 2x's or 4x's, or even to know about their response time of a particular request, how much time it takes in average. So first thing is that to connect your API to a proxy, and then get those data and then visualize them in a dashboard-like view.
Would proxy not introduce a network delay?
Possible if the proxy actually has those information that can be configured from that proxy itself, then you can, why not? And then if you have like a widget to show me also network delays, or maybe generate a problem log out of it, it can be possible. But you need to know that the proxy that you are using, they provide that information.
You mentioned that it's not functionally configurable. Can you talk a little bit more about how could you configure it, and what kind of things that you think that it would be configured to do? So people showing different information.
Okay. I don't exactly have those wireframes over here, but as a dashboard, I mean, if you are more concerned with like API response time of a particular API that you manage or have, you can always add it as a widget. Like I believe from my studies or from my work that people might want to start up with a few things which are like essential. Like for example, REST API, you might want to know that if the what can be the what are the response time, or what are the number of requests. So you can start with there, but then you can also have the option to add, maybe I want to track the usage pattern for a specific timeline, or maybe I can customize that timeline. Or even I want to have a widget which actually shows me status of a particular API. So those things can be customizable, and there can be a lot of options. And even like for a single API, you can have like this 3 rows, and the 3 rows are like showing 3 endpoint specific statistics.
Or what do you think? Is it, will the customer will be configuring their own dashboard, or would that be something that the provider does?
It actually depends like how you want to monetize your dashboard. Perhaps like if it is kind of like this open source thing and you are giving a free trial, start giving them like you can try out all the options for free in 30 days. But and then if it is like but then if the 30 days when they are gone, they need to pay for them. But also with a free trial, you can give like this specific configurable things like that. You can right now use API response time, API requests, but for using the endpoints, you might need to pay. It all depends on how you want your dashboard to be used or to be marketized.
Well, in our example, some of the clients do not want to use this dashboard, and that's why we are building now the so-called Flow API. You can get all the data from the proxies, different proxies, to one API, get all the information you want, and you can inject it to another dashboard system that you probably have, because you have a pipeline for development, and you have a way to monitor all your services, end products, and their status and everything. And this API part is one block in there. So you use our API and inject the data in your own dashboard.
Yeah.
That's one way.
That would be one way to get also the alerts to other systems. So you would kind of ask your dashboard API if certain values are on the threshold, and then you get alert from the actual your system.
So yeah, in brief, it looks to me, sorry for marvelous UX work and everything, but we're going towards the situation that API management is more or less a middleware solution, and the data is used in multiple locations. So this kind of group combination is probably for SaaS offering needed in there, but when it is a on-premise installation or something else, then the APIs come more and more used.
So any other questions from anyone? All right, I can then wrap it up.
You were looking for people who have real-time APIs.
Yes.
To interview.
Yeah, interview, because like those test cases are different, and when I talked with developers, I found out that the key performance indicator would be really different from what we are using in RESTful APIs. So that's why it's the idea that we should have 2 dashboards to show like 2 different types of visualizations, or even the matrices we are monitoring or seeing or adding them. Okay, so I guess now it's your time.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
You need to introduce me.
No.
No. I need to find it. Yeah, there it is. My presentation is gonna be rather short, if I can find it. Yeah. If I can find it again. I hate the Mac, sorry, all the Mac people in there. Oh. All right.
Now it's my turn.
Yeah.
Should I introduce you?
No. I think, yeah, Jarkko Moilanen, chief capitalist in Apin Oy, a company in Tampere, but people located already in Brazil and Ukraine and India and I don't know where else. But the headquarters is in Tampere, and not to tell you about coding, not to tell you about fancy APIs. I'm here to tell you about boring science. So API economy sounds a fancy word, but it's not rocket science. It's just API science about API economy. And who knows this guy? He looks a bit different nowadays, but who recognizes who's this guy? One. I'm sorry to say, guys, but start following the API scene a bit more, because this is the Ankin Lane, the API evangelist, the biggest guru currently in API world. He's a guy who's doing a lot of research, a lot of publications, and is followed by a lot of people and companies nowadays. And he's the pioneer in doing any kind of research in long term in API economy itself. And his work has been, as he himself says, it's more like an evangelist work. It's not. He's doing research on multiple fronts, from how to manage DNS management in APIs. So what's the design part and design process of the APIs? How's the API management of APIs? What's the security and what's the automation part? So he's touching every area alone. But that's all he does. That's his work, to evangelize different kind of solutions and practices and do some background research on. But he doesn't have any kind of academic ambitions or even interests. He doesn't use any citations. He doesn't reflect. He doesn't have any sources. He just does his stuff. So he's evangelizing. He's not doing research. It's a one-man show. But I was inspired by this guy, which I have met a few times. And I just finished my own PhD research on 3D printing pre-production. And despite of that, I'm still intrigued to do research more. Peer production is close to my heart. So doing together, sharing with each other is the way of doing for me. And I've been always an open person. My CEO, current CEO, said to me, I think it was last Sunday or Saturday when we were chatting in the chat room about some stuff about openness, and he said to me that, look, Jarkko, all people have to do is follow what the hell you say in Twitter and in Facebook and in any kind of social media, and they can actually know what you do. So I saw that as a sign that I might be too open at some point. But so far, I've been given the permission to be as open as I wish for any kind of matters. So from that point, I had the idea some weeks ago about starting API Economy Hack Lab. A Hack Lab, how many of you know what is a Hack Lab or hackerspace? Just a few. We'll take a look around from the web, for example. Hackerspaces.org is the way to get in hand to that. But it's a community of people who are not constrained by anyone. The community decides what they do, when they do, and what they focus on. In hackerspaces, they do exactly what they want. And the idea is that we take that kind of ideology from there to the research in API economy. We're not connected to any kind of providers, service providers or anyone. We don't take money from them. So they can't control what we actually research on or what our results are or they're published or not. So we're not tied to anyone. We don't have no obligations towards anyone. And that's the idea. And it's a group of researchers who normally does work in some way with the API economy in practical way. So we don't want to be in chambers, in the universities, in the 12th floor, in a room there, observing the world from there. But we want to be where the action happens, to interview the developers, be close to developers, be close to the API managers as persons, be in the field, and from there actually see what it actually is. So participatory participatory observation and even participation is required and wanted. And what we aim to do is, well, produce valid research and information about API economy, whatever interests the specific researcher. We don't narrow your scope to, for example, developer experience or API management or security. You pick your focus yourself. For example, mine is, I'm obsessed with the developer experience. Not so much about security or anything else or making revenue, but the developer experience is my focus. Now I'll stick to that. And by default, all the results are CC licensed, so Creative Commons license, open for everyone. So open access is preferred option for us. Hiding information, research information behind paid accounts or something, that's not science what it should be. And that's the current change is happening now. The open access is now really coming forward. So we shouldn't be paying for journal articles again and again and again and again. And well, yeah, we focus on API economy, however you want to understand it. But also, if you want to be you can go to platform economy because those are tied together in a way. But mostly we'll focus on API economy because it's tangible, easy to understand. Platform economy tends to go to macroeconomics and talking about Amazon business models and stuff, and that's kind of far away from the field research itself. What about developers? Well, if you are a developer and if you're part of the API Ops network, you might be invited to participate in some kind of research. I'm about to do my first invitation to the developers to participate because I need around 5 to 10 developers to be interviewed about the onboarding process of any API. I want to model the onboarding process and what's the pain points that the developers are experiencing at the moment, for example. It will be anonymous. Whenever you participate, your name will not come up anywhere. So that's the way research should be done. You respect the privacy of the people who are actually participating. And we're asking for developers to have an open mind, even though they are researchers. Some of them are PhD, some of them are masters, some of them are becoming masters. So they are trying to educate themselves. And they think at that point possibly quite academic way. So be patient and let us learn. And we might find something interesting for you to read, but mostly it will be the boring stuff that you already know, but the researchers verify that it is actually how we suspected it to be. That's basically it, and we have a blog at the moment in Medium. It's quite long, URL, but there you'll find the list of current researchers and the ones that we're going to invite to it. And there's also my first research on this topic. The plan for the research is there. The questions I'm going to use in the interviews are there already, and the invitation for the research for the interviews is already there, but it hasn't been sent out yet. So I'm finalizing a few things, and then I'm going to start the research on my own time. So this is a hobby. This is not part of my work. I'm doing it as a from passion. So if you want to be involved in any way, please join us. Because, for example, this research we are doing together with the NASIA, and our aim is to actually publish it as an article in journal. Some of these things go to academic journals. That's the aim. So it benefits NASIA, benefits me as well, because I get another article somewhere, and a scientific and academic article, which can be then used by others.
And I think it's also a really good chance because in the field of user experience. Developer experience is still new. There has been like very few articles or journal papers about it. So people, it's a good opportunity for people to learn about these things.
Yeah, it's my passion and my interest. So yours could be totally different than the other researchers. Jukka Niimäki from TUT might have a different approach and different things. So we're not limiting the researchers to what you should research. We're just giving API economy. Pick your topic. Start doing it in clear production way. That's it. All right. Any questions, perhaps? This was a rather short, and I hope to have first results to you, let's say in November or December. No questions? All right, good. Basically, we're done, and you're up now.
Yeah, now, but I would like to request you to announce the Developers Love winner.
Who is it?
I don't know.
Who knows? If you don't.
This one, yeah. Okay, so
Who's been the most active?
In Twitter?
Yeah, you yourself.
Yeah, I don't want that.
I think for the sake of our generosity, the gift should
I haven't been on Twitter actually.
So if we don't have people in Twitter, then we select one from here.
Mm-hmm.
Please nominate your buddy.
I have seen Anas and Sakari to be active.
Since I know that Sakari is a old timer in this, and the other guy is a newcomer into the circle, so I would like to encourage the newcomers. And Sakari is on the thumbs up. So I think we have a decision.
You can announce it.
No, it's your show.
I'm giving you it.
No.
Okay, so today's winner for this Amazon gift card, which is our way to show love and appreciation to the members of APOps, is Anas. And we also going to announce the one winner of APOps Mind Track based on today's participation, but that announcement will happen in the next meetup, which is on September 5th. So be excited about it, and if you still want to participate, there is also chances for you. Maybe write down a blog post in APOps Network in Medium or Twitter video over there. And we have our APOps meetup, which is for the September, and there is this really interesting thing that Kong would be actually coming to give a presentation over there. Also Digia and Swami SDK.
Yeah. So we have a national level spearhead project presenting their plans, what they actually are now. Well, not the plans, but what they're actually now building up and ramping up. A national level developer experience center on top of the national service architect. So that I'm involved in, and I'm telling you, it's interesting and it's gonna be big. So it's really developer focused build, and not administration focused, but the developers.
Okay. And this is our networks and social media, appyops.net, our Twitter handle, appyops, and then the Facebook group. And I guess we missed the medium group now, but we will add it in the next presentation. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much for participating here, and I wish you all a good evening.
See you next time.
Yeah.
And thank you for organizing.
And I thank you very much for having us at Flowworks. Okay.